Today, I am honored to welcome Jim Rogers, renowned investor, best-selling author, and co-founder of the Quantum Fund. Jim, you're known for your adventurous spirit and deep insights into global markets. And I'm super excited to be able to speak to you today about your knowledge of entrepreneurship, life abroad, and technology. So welcome, Jim.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Wow, I wish I were in Dubai.
Soon, soon.
Yes.
Jim, it's funny when I came across your work and, really reading about investment biker and hot commodities, to name a few, your books, sincerely, your work really does resonate with me as someone who's lived abroad. And I really believe that people should experience different countries for a whole host of reasons. But can you tell me a little bit about, I'm fascinated by investment biker, but can you tell me a little bit about just, and it's hard to probably summarize, your experience in what life abroad does for someone in terms of perspective and seeing the world through different lenses?
First, it teaches you a lot about yourself because if you're in a foreign land, you have to learn new things and you have to think for yourself a lot, probably a lot more than if you never leave home. So living abroad or traveling, especially experience abroad, deep experience teaches you a lot. It teaches you a lot about the world and it teaches you a lot about yourself. So I urge everybody to do it at one point in their life.
And I can imagine that at the time that you were exploring the world, it definitely wasn't commonplace to do it in the way that you were doing it. I mean, I remember going to China in the year 2000 and I thought I was like pioneer, but you were like way before then and doing it. Can you tell me what people would say to you? Like when you said, I'm going to travel the world on a bike, on a motorcycle, what was the pushback that you got?
Well, many people would say, why don't you fly? You've got enough money. You could fly around the world. But they didn't quite understand. I was interested in adventure and I was interested in seeing the world from the ground up. If you see the world close to the ground, you learn a lot more about the world and about yourself. So I hope everybody will go out and see the world on their own, not on a tour. Do it on your own.
You talk about this journey in Investment Biker, and can you tell the listeners like a bit about what that trip was like, maybe starting with some of the fears that you had in the beginning, or maybe the thoughts and how you overcame them?
But I had grown up in a small backwoods town where my phone number was 5. That's not a typo. Just one single 5 was my phone number. And so most people never left, or if they did, they didn't go far. So, which is fine. But I wanted to see the world because I knew there was a lot more out there and I wanted to see everything. And that meant the whole world, Africa, South America, everywhere. And that was my goal, my dream. And I set out to do it. And when I first set out to do it, it was impossible. You may remember Red China, Soviet Union, all of those places. They weren't about to let some American from Wall Street get on a motorcycle and drive across their country. It took me a long time to get permission, but I finally got permission and I did it. As I say, one guy said to me, why don't you fly? You've got enough money. I tried to explain to him that was not the point. I don't think he ever got it.
It's funny to think about that because even today, there are so many people who have never left their hometown. They simply don't see have the desire to see anything outside of their home state. They haven't traveled abroad, but yet they also complain about their economic status. They complain about lack of opportunity. Can you tell us what you would say to those people?
Well, I cannot change their minds no matter how many times I tell them. I can sure give them my books or something. I'm afraid there are people like that who really don't want to go anyplace else. My father wasn't that keen to do much travel. He told me he'd been to Europe because he'd fought in the Second World War. I said, Daddy, that's not quite the point. But there are people who are quite happy staying at home and seeing their friends, going to their church, whatever it is they do. And I was not one of those people, obviously. I wanted to see it all. So I set out to do it. I went around the world. I went around the world first time on my motorcycle, but it wasn't enough. So I wanted to do it again. So I went around the world twice so I could try to see it all. I hope that my children someday want to go around the world, but I'll go with them.
I'm afraid I might have the same travel bug or adventurous spirit that you have. Lived in China for a number of years, lived in Singapore, and now in Dubai. And a lot of what I talk about is the fact that your opportunities are really connected to how you see the world and what you've been exposed to. And what we're seeing today a lot is new asset classes. And I know that you have a lot of work and experience in commodities. And now we're seeing this technology create new asset classes, things such as real world assets and tokenization, and you have cryptocurrency and all of these things. And there's so much for people to learn. What would you say to someone who feels like I just can't learn it? It's too much. I don't know what to do. I just can't learn it.
Well, my first advice is please don't invest in things you don't know about. And if you can't learn it, don't invest. Let somebody else invest, or you found something else to invest in. A mistake which many people make is investing in things they don't really know or understand themselves. And it nearly always leads to problems and losses. So my first advice is if you don't know about it, either learn about it or don't do it. Stay with what you know and you will be successful. And if that means you have to go to Dubai or Portugal or somewhere, go and see. And you'll have fun and you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, because there seems to be this connection between the learning piece, right? And you're learning when you're traveling, but you're also learning as an entrepreneur. You have to, right? Otherwise, you will limit yourself to the opportunities that you only know about. You have to kind of push yourself and learn things and find out what you're passionate about and then really dig into them. I think today, in this world where everything's digital and people are consuming so much content, they're on social media watching this and they're on YouTube watching this. Sometimes it's hard for people to really focus in on that one thing. How did you know when you were going to focus in on commodities? What was that moment like?
Well, when I became an investor, I learned pretty quickly if I didn't know about it, I was probably going to lose money. But I also learned pretty quickly that there were many parts of the world that most people ignored or didn't know about. And often that meant there were great opportunities there because if people were ignoring it, they were probably, whatever it was probably pretty cheap. And I realized that about commodities fairly early in my career. I knew that there was a commodities page in the Wall Street Journal, but I was very surprised how few people even knew it was there, much less read it. Nobody read it. Very few read it. So I realized early that probably were opportunities. And so I started reading the commodities page in the Wall Street Journal and learned a lot and found opportunities. And that's still the case. It's the case about investing abroad. I can remember talking to people once on Wall Street about foreign European currencies. They thought I was crazy. They didn't want to talk about European currency. Well, what's wrong with me? But I realized that those were opportunities. If there were sections of the world economy that people didn't pay attention to, there might well be an opportunity. And there was.
Do you think that today there are still sections of the world, certain countries that people aren't paying attention to that they should be paying attention to?
Well, that's always the case. And my answer is yes, not like there used to be. I mean, now everybody knows there's an oil market. Believe it or not, when I first went to Wall Street, there was no publicly traded market in oil, the largest commodity in the world. But you couldn't trade it, not in an organized market. I mean, now everybody knows it. So there's an exchange and everything else. But in those days, oil, gold, stuff like that, completely unknown as far as markets were concerned. Therein, there was an opportunity. And now, of course, everybody knows about oil and gold and things like that.
It's funny to hear you talk about how the markets used to be And I can imagine that you've seen many economic cycles. You've seen markets go up, you've seen them come down, you've seen sort of history repeat itself. And in retrospect, looking at all of these things, what are your thoughts about where we are today? I mean, today we have, as I mentioned, we've got cryptocurrencies coming out. We have so many dynamics in the global political stage that a lot of people are quite shocked by. Everything is sort of in flux, and I think there's probably a lot of fear, an investor fear that might be going on. What would you say to those people?
Well, I have lost money in lots of ways. I'm good at losing money. I can find a way to lose money any month. You tell me. My answer is there is an opportunity. And whatever it is, you should at least look to see if there's an opportunity, and if there is, what it is and how to do something about it. Because we don't, again, in the old days, most people just bought shares on the New York Stock Exchange. Everybody knew about General Motors back in the day. Now, of course, there are markets all over the world which people know about, and commodity markets in commodities, oil, gold, all this stuff. These markets didn't exist once upon a time. So if one takes the time and has the patience and the brains to do some research, you might find a great opportunity and make a lot of money. And my advice to everybody is look where other people are not looking, and you might find something.
I love that. Look where other people are not looking and you might find something. When I hear you say that, I also kind of hear, at least what resonates with me and what I take away is do what other people are not doing.
Well,
And maybe that's a little bit too risky, but that's kind of how I see things sometimes.
well, if you look where other people aren't looking, you're probably going to find something that other people are not doing, and you are probably going to find an opportunity. So do it, do it, do it. Look out the window. And if you see something new, keep looking, keep digging.
And it's funny, a number of my listeners are women. And I think for women, we have this unique challenge where part of our identity is, okay, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I've got to take care of the house, etc. And you've seen, gender roles go all through sorts of changes in society. But there's always this desire to do more and be more. And I think a lot of women really would like to be adventurous the way you have. And they really would. I'd like to get on a motorcycle and try, as a matter of fact. But, I'm serious, though. I mean, I think a lot of women aspire to embrace that adventurous spirit. And, I think your journey is really an inspiration to many of them. It's not necessarily a question, but it's just kind of an observation on my part.
I grew up in a very small town where my phone number was 5. I knew there was something else. Now, many people never leave home, and it's fine if that's what they want. But I knew there was something else out there, and I wanted to go see it. And I was crazy. I did it twice. Once wasn't enough. I've driven a lot of places. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I'm still alive. So let's go. If you want to go, send me an email.
It's funny how you can look back on stories like that. I mean, I have some stories from China where I was like, in situations and in spots that if my daughter today were to do something like that, I'd probably just be really, really nervous about her doing it. But are there any particular moments? I'm sure you have a lot. I'm sure you have a number of stories, but any particular moment that you'd be willing to share about some of your travels in Asia, particularly?
I don't want to sound like this is so easy. It's not. I was once held hostage in Congo for 8 days. I mean, it wasn't fun. I'm still alive, as you can see, but no, they wouldn't let us go. And finally, they put us on a flat car, drove us out of town, told the engineer, don't let them off until they're in the next country. So, I mean, these were not, I don't recommend these experiences to people because they can be quite scary at times. But in the end, no matter how bad things were, I learned something. And I guess I didn't always think about it that way, except looking back, I said, well, at least I learned something. That's easy to say after you get off the train, off the flat car or whatever it is. But at the time, you're going to learn something. Unless you get killed or something, you're going to learn something. And that is worth the trip to me.
Do you think these adventures inspired the investing and the entrepreneurship, or do you think the investing and entrepreneurship inspired the adventures?
Well, I was an investor before I was an adventurer, partly because I didn't have any money when I was young. But I did want to see the world. I do remember that I wanted to see the world and have new experiences, even when I didn't have any money. One of the reasons I wanted to make some money was so that I could retire and have adventure. That was my goal, adventure. So I remember telling them, all the reporters, I wanted adventure. Like I was strange, but that's mainly what I remember. My goal in life was to have adventure.
Oh, that really resonates. And a lot of the work I do, sometimes you wake up in the morning and you say, is it impactful? How do I feel about what I'm doing every single day? How do I feel about it? And if it's not fulfilling you on some level, whether it's adventure or social impact or whatever it is, then you got to go back to the drawing board and you got to ask yourself, how do I get to where it is that I want to be?
So you call me.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'll ruin your life. If you're not ruining your life yourself, don't worry. I can ruin your life.
I think some people want that, though. Seriously, Jim, no, I think people are working in a 9 to 5. They've got bills, they've got obligations, they feel stressed, they've got kids, they've got all this stuff. And they look out and they read your book. They read your book, they see your story, and they're like, oh, this guy was on a motorcycle, he was traveling, he was doing all, and now he's in Singapore. He's like, I want to do that. I want to do that. But I've got this, and there's all this baggage, and they can't mentally pull out of it.
Well, I don't know why I was nuts. Maybe that's the answer, because I was nuts. But I wanted to see the world. That was my goal. I knew there was a lot of stuff out there that I didn't know about, and I wanted to learn about it. I thought it wasn't my original goal, but I realized pretty quickly that I would find opportunities to make money as well if I was observant and did my research. Might also make some money. And that made it even more interesting.
I'm hearing you say that risk is not bad. I'm starting to look at risk as a good thing.
Well, if you lose money or lose your health or your something, risk is not good. Just be careful. I assure you, if you lose an arm, it's not good. So be careful, whatever you're going to do. And if you think you're going to have adventure, call me. I'll give you my view and probably tell you not to do it, but that's up to you.
Jim, I just want to say again, I really do. Your story is very inspiring as someone so I'll give you a bit of background about me. I come from a small town in Connecticut, not Alabama, but Connecticut, still small town, still farm town. And I was the first one in my family to even get a passport. So I think from the socioeconomic perspective, when I went to China the first time, I was told they don't have food there. You're going to die of starvation. They don't like Black people. Something bad's going to happen to you if you go. And this was even in the year 2000. So I can imagine what you were told. But I think what really resonates with me about what you've done is that you did it your way, and you did it to fulfill something that was inside of you. And then on top of that, you found the profit, right? So we talk about passion and profit and purpose and all these things, but you found the profit because you were listening to that internal voice. And I think that's really inspiring.
Well, for what it's worth, I love Black people. If you're going to do something, I'm not afraid of Black people. I grew up in the middle of lots of Black people, though. I grew up in Alabama, which had a lot of Black people, but the part of the state where I grew up was known as the Black Belt. It was known as the Black Belt because there was a huge strip of black soil, and it's where all the plantations were. But since the plantations were there, there were a lot of Black people there too, eventually. So if you want to go, you let me know. I'll call you, and we'll go off and get killed together. Although I don't want to get killed. No. No. We'll go and have our own adventure.
That's right. Absolutely. And, I might have to take a page out of your book and get a motorcycle to do a photo shoot, because when I saw that cover, I was like, hey, that's what I'm talking about. It's adventure. It's free spirited. It's wild. And that's what I'm looking for, too.
Hooray. I mean, I don't think there was much of that in Connecticut, but maybe I missed something. I went to school in Connecticut, and I actually liked it. So who knows?
That's right. You went to Yale. That's right.
I did a long time ago in Yale's in Connecticut.
Great. Wonderful, Jim. No, I really appreciate your time today. I think there's a lot that my listeners can learn from you and what you've done. And on behalf of them and me, thank you so much for sharing your story. Guys, please, please, and I'm not saying this as a plug, I'm saying it out of the bottom of my heart. Check out Jim's work, check out his books, see what he's done, and draw some inspiration from it. It surely inspired me. So I just want to say thank you for joining us today, Jim.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm delighted. I'm delighted. Next time I'm in Dubai, maybe our paths will cross. I like
Excellent.
Dubai. I mean, Dubai, how long have you been there?
About 3 years.
Oh, my gosh, it's changed a lot in the last 3 years. You can imagine in the past 13 or 30 years, my gosh, it's changed. It's an amazing place now. I guess it's changed so much because you're there. You've changed it.
Absolutely. I would hope that's the reason. But Dubai,
Right.
yeah, it's another place where construction is just going bonkers here. Construction
Sure.
left and right. And you have Saudi in the wings, which is also, looking to really, really develop with NEOM and other projects it has going on. I kind of think this region, as well as Africa, at least from my standpoint, maybe not the commodities perspective, maybe just from a business transaction perspective, these are the two regions that I'm looking at. Maybe I shouldn't have said it on the podcast because people may follow me and then it won't be a secret anymore. But those are the regions I'm looking at.
Well, I will tell you, yes, those places you mentioned, Saudi Arabia and others, have changed enormously. But what I notice now is they're changing dramatically now. Even Saudi Arabia, which when I first tried to go to Saudi Arabia, they wouldn't let us travel in Saudi Arabia because it was so closed. But now, I mean, even Saudi Arabia is changing dramatically. And it's going to be even more exciting in the next decade or two because they've been so closed for so long. I mean, Dubai, where you live now, it was closed 30 years ago. There's nothing there. There's no reason to open up. But all of these places are opening up now and changing, and it's exciting. At least that's the kind of thing that I find exciting. So I hope to see you on the road.
Thanks, Jim. And I hope to get to see me on my motorcycle one day. So
When you're
there we
on your
go.
bike, you let me know.
All right.
Well,
Jim
go to
Rogers, thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.